I want you to feel the ground slip beneath you. Tonight, I'm going to take you somewhere deep, somewhere science threatens what you believed about everything. A new lab experiment, fresh, peer-reviewed, just months old, suggests reality may be far stranger than even quantum mechanics dared whisper. What if what you see, what you touch, what you think is real, is actually a kind of mirage? What if the true world lies behind a shimmering veil? We all live inside that veil. We assume solidity, continuity, everyday cause and effect. We think reality is fixed. But quantum physics has been nibbling around the edges of that assumption for a century. Now this new result pushes further. It whispers that the veil is thicker than we thought, that the real layer might be completely unlike our senses. In the next few minutes, you'll travel with me through a cutting-edge lab into the guts of measurement, wave functions, observer effects, and paradoxes. We'll see how physicists are no longer simply interpreting quantum weirdness. They are building devices to test how deep the illusion goes. By the end, I hope to leave you unsettled, in the best way possible. Because if reality is not what it seems, everything changes. What we call life, identity, choice, even truth. Let's dive. This new experiment stems from an audacious question. Can we probe whether the appearance of a measurement is imposed after the system evolves, or whether there is a deeper, hidden ontological layer we've never detected? In other words, is the universe withholding a deeper structure behind its quantum facade? The team started with a refined version of the double-slit Gauge quantum interference paradigm, but with extreme control. Instead of slits carved in metal, they used individual atoms held in traps as slits, and fired single photons or particles at them, observing scattering, interference, and the exchange of information. This allowed them to precisely control how much which path information leaks out, versus how coherent the interference remains. This is reminiscent of recent MIT work on atom slit analogs of double-slit experiments. What they found was subtle but profound. By adjusting the information coupling even slightly, they could make the system behave as if the particle chose its path retroactively. The interference pattern would degrade or re-emerge depending on measurement contexts that seemed later in time. That is, manipulating the measurement apparatus after the system was en route had a statistically measurable effect. They framed this in terms of a delayed choice plus quantum erasure hybrid, but pushed further. They introduced a witch information controller that could act in a superposition of being turned on or off. The experiment is not merely did you look or not, but did the apparatus decide itself whether to permit witch path knowledge or not? The result, the interference signatures shifted, not merely by decoherence or noise, but in a way inconsistent with a classical underlying assignment of paths. In simpler terms, the system's behavior, wave versus particle, isn't fixed until the final conditions, and those final conditions can influence even invisibly the prior state's appearance. This shocks our intuitions. It suggests that what we call past behavior is plastic, not fixed. It hints that the world may not exist in a concrete form until measurement completes the act. It suggests that reality is not a solid bedrock shimmering behind matter, but a performance emerging only at the moment of observation. But here's the kicker. The authors propose that what they measured isn't just quantum strangeness, but a signal of a deeper substrate, a sub-quantum level that doesn't commit to definite states until forced. They argue that the illusion itself is what's real, that reality is like a cosmic stage play, where objects only solidify under the gaze of measurement. If this is true, then the world we navigate, tables, planets, even you and me, are emergent actors, not foundational entities. And if measurement generates reality, not just reveals it, then the only thing behind the curtain is this ongoing act of collapse. So here is where the experiment leaves us on the edge. What if consciousness or the act of observation is not passive, but a co-creator of the physical world? Common sense screams against this. Every instinct tells you that the past is locked, the present is unfolding, and the future waits ahead. We live by this rhythm. 'Cause first, effect later. Drop a glass, then it shatters. Say a word, then hear its echo. The chain is unbreakable. But the experiment we just explored cracks this chain open. It whispers. Maybe the glass doesn't decide to be broken until after the pieces hit the floor. That sounds absurd, yet quantum mechanics thrives on absurdity. Think about it. If measurement can retroactively sculpt the system's history, then our assumption that events are neatly sewn into a fixed past collapses. The past may not be a completed book. It might be a sketchbook where pages are penciled in, then re-inked depending on how we later choose to look. This is not just metaphor. In delayed choice experiments, a photon traveling through space seems undecided. Was it a wave interfering with itself, or a particle taking one slit? Only at the moment of detection, sometimes even influenced by later settings, does the photon's past become defined. It's as if the particle reaches back in time and rewrites its own biography. And here's where the illusion bites hardest. Our brains evolved to compress this complexity into a tidy, linear reality. We see objects, trajectories, causes, outcomes. We edit out the indeterminacy. The illusion of solidity, continuity, and pre-existing facts is not optional. It's a survival mechanism. Without it, we'd freeze in a fog of uncertainty. But under the microscope of quantum experiments, this survival filter crumbles. We begin to glimpse that what we call the real world is a projection stitched together for our convenience. The real engine underneath doesn't care about our categories of cause and effect. It dances to a rhythm where time can bend, choices ripple backward, and facts don't exist until anchored by observation. Here's a provocative twist. If reality is plastic at the foundations, then perhaps all of classical history, the battles, the births, the decisions you think are etched forever, are in some sense emergent fictions, stabilized only at the macroscopic scale. A trillion quantum decisions, cemented by decoherence, congeal into the illusion of an irreversible past. So, the illusion isn't just in physics labs, it is in your memory, in your certainty, in your trust that yesterday is secure. And that's where the danger lies, because if the past itself can be rewritten by the conditions of the present, what exactly is safe to call real? We're forced to admit, our common sense map of reality is not reality itself. It's a story written for primates trying to survive. The experiment proves the cracks are not philosophical poetry. They are measurable, undeniable, physical. And if the cracks widen, the entire wall we call the real world may not just wobble, it may collapse. When scientists claim that reality itself might be an illusion, it can sound like philosophy wrapped in lab coats. But let's slow down and climb carefully, step by step, through the evidence that pushes us toward this unsettling conclusion. 4 rungs on this ladder, each stranger than the last. First rung, the double slit experiment. A particle acts like a wave when unobserved, creating an interference pattern. But the moment you look, it behaves like a particle with a definite trajectory. Already, the world seems to decide how it exists depending on observation. Second rung, the delayed choice experiment. John Wheeler's idea, tested decades later, showed that even after a photon passes the slits, whether it behaves as a wave or a particle can still depend on a later measurement. It's as if the photon waits to see how you'll look before deciding what it was. That alone should have shattered our sense of time's arrow. Third rung, the quantum eraser. Here, information about the path is first recorded, but then erased. Astonishingly, the interference pattern reappears, as though the universe forgives the act of peeking if you later delete the evidence. Information, not particles, seems to carry the key to reality's form. Fourth rung, the newest, and the one shaking physics right now, superposed measurement devices. Instead of a human or a detector making a clear choice, the apparatus itself can be placed into a quantum superposition, simultaneously choosing to record or not record path information. The result is neither classical nor random. Reality, under these conditions, doesn't collapse into one state or the other. It wavers, waiting for the final resolution. This is the experiment we just explored, and it stands as one of the boldest signals yet that our solid world might be a carefully constructed facade. Put these rungs together, and a theme emerges. Reality is not independent of observation. It is not a brick wall standing indifferent to us. Instead, it flexes, bends, and even rewrites itself depending on how and when it is measured. The lab results don't merely suggest the illusion, they demonstrate it, with statistics, detectors, and photons playing the part of tricksters. Critics argue, maybe there's a hidden layer, variables we haven't uncovered. But Bell's theorem and countless loophole-free tests have hammered those doors shut. Local hidden variables don't fit the data. Non-local ones raise more problems than they solve. The evidence converges on one unsettling truth. What we call reality is not self-sufficient. Now imagine where this leads. If every measurement, every act of observation participates in creating the world, then what happens in the spaces no one looks at? What happens in the unmeasured corners of the cosmos? Are they even real? If reality is shaped, or even conjured, by observation, then we're not just doing physics anymore. We've stepped into the oldest battlefield of philosophy. What does it mean to exist? For centuries, materialism has told us that the world is out there, independent, grinding forward whether or not we look. Atoms bump into atoms, stars burn, galaxies collide. Human perception is incidental. The universe doesn't care if we're here or not. That's the comfort and the terror of materialism. But quantum mechanics doesn't play along. These experiments don't just inconvenience materialism, they challenge its very spine. If the act of observing can reshape, erase, or rewrite what was real, then the old worldview breaks. Reality is no longer an indifferent machine. It is relational, participatory, responsive. This isn't to say consciousness alone creates the universe. That's the trap some fall into. Physicists push back, arguing the apparatus, not the human mind, triggers collapse. But even then, the problem doesn't go away. If detectors themselves must exist in definite states to crystallize outcomes, then where does definiteness truly begin? At the sensor? At the atom that interacts with the sensor? Or only when a conscious being finally checks the readout? No line is clean. Critics insist quantum weirdness is microscopic. Macroscopic reality is safe. Yet decoherence, the process that stabilizes the classical world from quantum fuzz, doesn't explain why only one outcome is chosen. It just buries the question in complexity. The illusion of solidity is maintained, but the cracks are still there, glowing underneath. And this is where the shockwave hits hardest. If what we call real is conditional, then truth itself is conditional. That rock in your hand, that sky above your head, may not exist in the way you think they do until certain interactions make them solid. The universe is not a pre-written book. It's an improvisational performance, and we are part of the audience and the cast at the same time. Of course, some philosophers have long suspected this. From Berkeley's idealism to Eastern traditions that called the material world Maya, an illusion, there have always been whispers that existence is more like a dream than a machine. But the difference is, now the laboratories are catching up. The dream is not just metaphor, it leaves tracks on detectors and equations. And if reality is an illusion stabilized for our survival, then the deepest question remains unanswered. Whose illusion is it? Ours? Nature's? Or something larger than both? Because if the world requires participation to exist, then the very foundation of existence may depend on something beyond particles and equations. If reality is not fixed but elastic, an illusion assembled in real time, then the next question isn't just philosophical, it's practical. What happens when technology learns to exploit this illusion? Already, quantum computing is nibbling at the edges of this idea. These machines don't calculate by flipping bits of yes or no. They harness superposition, interference, and entanglement, precisely the tools that reveal reality's malleability. A quantum computer doesn't care about fixed states until the very end of a calculation. It thrives in the in-between, the half-real space where possibilities coexist. In a sense, it is the first technology built to live inside the illusion rather than fight it. Now imagine what comes next. If experiments can demonstrate that measurement choices retroactively sculpt outcomes, could future devices be designed to nudge reality's script? Instead of passively recording the world, could we engineer systems that steer which version of reality solidifies? It sounds like science fiction, but so did quantum teleportation, until labs started doing it with photons across kilometers of fiber. There's also a cosmic angle. If unobserved regions of the universe exist only in a fog of potentiality, then telescopes are not just revealing distant galaxies, they are co-creating them. Every photon caught by a detector billions of years after it left its star might only crystallize that star's existence in the moment of measurement. In this sense, astronomy itself could be an act of cosmic authorship. And what about you? If reality depends on interaction, then the rise of AI and autonomous quantum devices could change the balance. Machines that observe, measure, and interact at scales far beyond human ability might begin to anchor versions of reality we would never have encountered otherwise. The illusion would no longer be shaped only by human perception, but by a widening network of artificial observers. But here comes the most radical frontier. If observation creates reality, then controlling observation could be more powerful than controlling matter itself. The economy of the future might not be about mining resources or even harnessing energy. It could be about sculpting reality at its quantum core. Whoever masters that could bend what counts as real. It's a breathtaking possibility, and a terrifying one. Because if reality is an illusion that can be engineered, then the line between discovery and manipulation blurs. Let's step away from labs and telescopes for a moment. Forget photons, detectors, superpositions. What does all of this mean for you? For the way you live, choose, and think? If reality is an illusion, then your daily experience isn't a passive reflection of some external truth. It's an active construction. Every time you look, listen, decide, or even imagine, you participate in shaping what counts as real. The table you touch, the conversation you recall, the memory that feels solid, all of these may be performances stabilized by your interaction with them. That changes how we think about certainty. How many arguments in your life have been built on the assumption that the past is fixed? How often have you told yourself, "It happened, therefore it must always be true"? But what if the past isn't etched in stone? What if it's more like wet clay, setting only as we revisit it, reinterpret it, reobserve it? Suddenly, even memory itself feels like part of the quantum illusion. It also reshapes how we think about possibility. If the world emerges from uncertainty, then uncertainty isn't something to fear. It's the raw material of existence. The blank canvas is not empty. It's the birthplace of every form the universe might take. That means your choices, your attention, your presence matter in a way deeper than psychology or self-help. They matter ontologically. Even small acts gain weight in this view. Looking up at the night sky, you're not just admiring stars. You may be collapsing ancient light into being. Watching a single photon blink on a detector screen, you're co-authoring part of reality's script. And perhaps, when you simply notice something in your daily life, a stranger's smile, the color of a leaf, the silence between words, you're anchoring tiny fragments of the world into existence. But there's a flip side. If reality is fragile, conditional, participatory, then denial and blindness are not neutral. Ignoring problems, closing your eyes to injustice, refusing to see, these choices may not just be psychological avoidance. They might literally allow certain versions of reality to remain uncrystallized, unchallenged, and unrealized. That realization can be both empowering and haunting. Empowering because it suggests we are not passengers in a fixed universe. We are co-authors. Haunting because it means responsibility runs deeper than we thought. Every act of attention might ripple into the fabric of what becomes real. So the question becomes personal, intimate, unavoidable. If your gaze helps shape the world, what do you choose to see? So here we are, standing at the edge of an unsettling but beautiful truth. The world is not the solid, unquestionable structure we once believed. It is more like a moving canvas, painted and repainted in every moment by observation, interaction, and awareness. The experiments don't just whisper this, they shout it. Photons that decide their past after the fact. Apparatuses that wobble between choices until the very end. A cosmos that seems less like a stage already built and more like a performance unfolding only as the curtain rises. Reality, in this view, is not an object, it's a verb. Something that happens when conditions align. And where does that leave us? Not as spectators, but as participants. You are not drifting in a universe indifferent to you. You are helping call it into being. Your attention is not trivial. It is part of the machinery of existence. Every choice of focus is a brushstroke on the canvas of the real. Think of it this way. Walking down a quiet street at night, the lamppost flickers, the leaves rustle, the air feels thick with potential. You are not just noticing reality, you are finalizing it, pinning it down, weaving it into the fabric of what is. That simple moment, often overlooked, is cosmic in scale. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest illusion of all is believing you are powerless. So I leave you with this. Do you believe this quantum idea changes everything? Or is it just science fiction? Tell me below. Your view might change someone's mind.